got to remember, there was no such thing as sound baths. Nobody was talking about sound healing. I mean, I can't say nobody, but very few.
Mm-hmm.
It was not trending. In fact, people would look at my bowls and they would go, "Huh, you got a salad bowl." You make soup in this, you know. And I would roll my eyes and I would go, no.
Not quite.
It would happen all the time. I mean, I'm not talking about a little bit. I mean, this comment I got regularly. Okay. So, which of course now, you know, people would never even say anything like that.
My guest today is Ashana. Ashana is a globally recognized visionary vocal artist, composer, and master teacher of sound healing whose work has helped shape the modern crystal singing bowl movement. Her acclaimed recordings, including All Is Forgiven, Jewels of Silence, Cosmic Grace, and Celestial Sleep, have become cherished companions in meditation, healing, and wellness spaces around the world. She is also the award-winning author of Crystal Singing Bowls, The Angelic Sound of Rest, Relaxation, and Spiritual Awakening. Through her music, teachings, and pioneering work, Ashana has inspired millions to experience the transformative power of sound.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to Cold Cut with Angelique. And today I have an incredible guest. Ashana, thank you so much for joining me at Cold Cut with Angelique. I met Ashana through another guest who actually happens to be her other half, James Kawanui. And I always say his name wrong because I can't pronounce anything for Holy High Hell. But, and as it turned out, I had heard Ashana's music separately, completely outside of hearing about you from James. And when he told me that you were his wife, I just about freaked out. And so here you are. And on top of everything else, we're both from New York, so we have so much to talk about. Ashana, thank you for being on the show.
Oh my God, Angelique, I've so been looking forward to this. I'm very, very happy to be with you. So thank you.
Me too. I would love for you to get right into it and tell our audience a little bit about you and how you got into this healing space with the bowls and the music.
Well, I am a healing music artist, let's put it that way, and a teacher of sound healing with crystal singing bowls and recording artist and musician and all of those kind of juicy things. So now you got all the labels. I could give you the fancy ones, but we don't need to do that right here. So how did I get into this? Well, I was you know, growing up in New York City back in the 50s and 60s. Yes, that is how old I am. You know,
We don't look it.
well, you know, back in those days, God, I can't even believe I'm saying this, all right? But back in those days and in up until the 70s and even sometimes to the 80s, children had music in schools,
Yeah.
okay? Let's just like say that. Music, and art, and languages. And, you know, I had that from day one in public school and elementary school. And music just became a passion for me. It was something I loved as a little girl. I went on to high school to a specialized program in music and the arts. And then I ended up going to conservatory in New York City where I received a degree in a bachelor's of music in vocal performance. And I was just finding myself, you know, and exploring all kinds of things. And I think this is really
Yes.
important, you know, we need to do this kind of stuff, you know, explore and taste and what is this like and what is that like? And that is what I was doing. Classical music, musical theater, jazz and pop music, anything, early music. Also, I did big specialties in early music, that's medieval and, Renaissance music. And I began composing, I had been playing instruments for a good long while, and then there was a period of time where I really deep dove
Wow.
into, children's music, of all things, and about an 11-year journey with that, which was actually extraordinary. But inside me, I was always like, I need to write, I need to compose, and I've been doing that all along. And at some point in time in, the late 1990s, I think it was like 1999 or something, uh, uh, a spiritual I'll call her a spiritual catalyst, for a better word. She called me up one day and she said, "Have you ever heard of crystal singing bowls?" And I said, "No." She said, "These are right up your alley." And so right then that moment, I purchased one over the phone. Wasn't online at that point in time, but purchased it over the phone, sight unseen. 3 weeks later, shows up at my house. I was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the time, and pulled it out of the box. I put it on the kitchen table. I tapped the side of the bowl with the mallet, and I promptly burst into tears. I had thought it was like instantaneous recognition. And the very, very first thought I had, and you have to remember these 2 thoughts were like one right on top of the other. The first thought that I had was one day, well, actually, the first thought I had was light has come to
Ooh,
live in my
chills.
house, right? I know. And I was crying by this point, right? I had tears, like, rolling down my face, and the very second thought that I had instantaneously was that one day I'm gonna put these into music. And really, up until that time, it was recordings with bowls were very few and far between, and, there just wasn't anything substantive that had been done with them on a very large scale. Uh, so for my story, 3 weeks later, after that first bowl arrived, I had 7. It was like a no-brainer to me, and now I live with 125. So, I tell everybody they like potato chips, they can't eat just eat one, or I also tell them that when I'm sleeping, they propagate. So and I swear to James, my husband, I said, "I'm not getting any more," and then, of course, one shows up. Um, and he looks at me and he goes, "Sure, sure, sure." He goes, "Honey, we have no more room." But I made room.
Yes. Yes.
So it was like after that happened, I spent a few years, just exploring them. These were the big white classic frosted bowls. I didn't have any alchemies at the time. The ones you see behind me are all alchemy bowls, and, they're different, and we can talk about that too.
Yeah, definitely.
What happened for me was I spent this time, kind of getting to know them and getting to know the sound and singing with them and playing with them, and you gotta remember, there was no such thing as sound baths. Nobody was talking about sound healing. I mean, I can't say nobody, but very few.
Mhm.
It
That's
was
right.
not trending. In fact, people would look at my bowls and they would go, "Huh, you got a salad bowl." "You make soup in this?" You know? And I would roll my eyes and I would go, "No."
Not quite.
It would happen all the time. I mean, I'm not talking about a little bit. I mean, this comment I got regularly, okay? So which of course now, people would never even say anything like that.
Yep.
So there was just this period of time when, there were no teachers, nothing, and I was just self-teaching. Now, gotta bear in mind I had, decades of musical training. And so I approached them at the time. I approached the bowls solely as instruments. And it was like this gradual thing that began happening is that, oh my goodness, these are way more than instruments. And so that was a very long, slow arc for me to begin to pay attention to what the bowls were actually opening up in me. And because there was nobody to talk to about it, really, very few people, I was having all these experiences by myself.
Oh my gosh.
So, I learned a lot. I did
Yes.
some I tell all my students, "If there was a mistake to be made with your crystal bowls, I have made it," you know? It was completely, you know, experiential learning. And, um, and at that point in time, it was intuitive learning in terms of, the energetics. As I got more and more and more involved in it, I would start to meet more people. And of course, as the years went by, more was coming in. But in 2005, I decided that it was time. I'd been, as I said, teaching music. for young children. I've been singing, I've been composing, I've been, doing all that kind of stuff all along. And I went, "I'm done. It's time." And I knew I needed to, make my first album. I was clear about it. I knew I had a good sense of the direction that I wanted it to go. I wasn't really thinking about bowls and vocals and integrating, even though I'd been all doing all that stuff because I was composing lots of different stuff as kind of singer-songwritery sort of thing. And I sold my business for teaching. And literally the day I closed on sold my business was the day I met Thomas Barkey, my producer. It went
Man,
exactly like that. I mean, it was so and so what I love to, share in hindsight, retrospect about this story is, there was that day that those bowls came in my life on the kitchen table, and that was the moment. I didn't understand it, but life as Ashana knew it was over because it was gonna go in a completely different direction, and the first thing Thomas said to me after I sent him some music samples was, "If I were your producer, I would focus your music to healing music." And I was like, "Huh?" Okay, you gotta remember, like, healing music, what the heck was that in 2005? You know what I mean? It's like, "Oh,
yes.
okay." And, but I trusted him implicitly, and I knew he was the right person for me. I was like, 100% because of everything that he had done. And so literally we got together in September 2005 and we recorded All Is Forgiven in 6 days. It was like
Boom.
this, I mean, the vocals and the bowls and all of my part of it, and then he took it away and made magic with it, which he always does. We've been working together 20 years now, we're getting to ready to release I'm in process of releasing my ninth album. And, yeah, I know, and, I get to tour, I get to teach, I wrote a book, I did, like got, like, ba, 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 ba. But did I see all of that coming? Heck no, you know?
No.
That wasn't even on my radar. So, it was pretty magical. It's been a very, 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 very magical journey.
Ooh, I mean, wow. There's so many things I wanna, hone in on. But one thing that's super important that you said that I love, so the Bulls, and I just wanna make sure I got it right. The Bulls came to you initially in the '90s, right? The late '90s?
Late '90s, like, maybe 1990, 1999.
9? And
Yes.
it wasn't until 2005, and what I love to tell people is sometimes the path arrives and it doesn't take off until it's ready. There is a
Yeah.
divine timing that
Yeah.
we don't know what that necessarily is because time isn't really linear. We perceive it as linear, but it isn't. And so people get so frustrated. But Ashana is a fabulous example of what happens when you're heart led and you're following your intuition and you're
Uh-huh.
allowing yourself to just roll with it. And then suddenly all the universe conspires. The day you,
Right.
close your business, your
Yeah.
next opening comes and your life and you knew it. My life is never gonna be the same.
Yeah.
I also liked what you said about the bowls because I've been I was one of those kids who were in those spiritual stores. I remember the one in Mount Kisco was called Sunburst Crystals, and I was looking for everything. And you're right. It was not a lot of stuff with sound, which is so interesting because sound is what actually transforms our cells and everything else. I always say, like, light is knowledge, but sound is transformation. So this has really been, you were really at the forefront of when this started to come out into the mainstream world.
Yes.
Yeah. And how did that feel? You guys, you cut this album and out it goes, and the response.
Well, here's the really interesting thing about that. Thomas, he's so wise, and I'm thinking about this now when I'm sharing this to you. I remember it was in 2005 after we finished recording, I was standing in his living room looking up at him because he's like 6'2", and I'm like, doing this. And and I said to him, "This song's gonna sell 100,000 copies. This music's gonna sell 100,000 copies." And he was like, "Yeah, John, we'll see what happens." And I said, "Mark my words." And and what he said to me was, "Ashana, you have to remember that the music that we created is eternal, and it's gonna live long after we're gone." And then he said, um, and then and I lost what he had said, but it was like that the music was timeless and that it was eternal. And, and we didn't know what it was going to do. And the truth of the matter is that, oh, this was the other thing he said. He said, "You gotta remember, we're ahead of our time." And he continuously tells me to do that, even with the new stuff that we just released. He said, "Ashana, you gotta remember this is ahead of its time." And I was like, "Okay." I didn't really understand what that meant until we started releasing All's Forgiven started going out there, and I was like, "Listen to this music, it's amazing," right? And people go, "Huh?" They're like, "What are you doing?
Yep.
Crystal bowls?" Right? But they would hear the music, and this is like such the magical thing about what we had done, which had never been done before. And it ended up that we actually created in our creative process, we ended up creating the genre of healing music with crystal symbols. It hadn't really existed before. So before it was just people that kind of used it as some instrument, and then they would do a little guided meditation with it. And it's kind of like a lot of what's still happening to
Yeah.
this. But Thomas and I, both really very mm, experienced musicians. We looked at this and we said, this belongs inside of music. So we created, the first song we wrote was Ave Maria. And everybody, when they hear that, they just go, "Oh my God, what just hit me? What happened to me when this?" And it's that combination of beautiful music where the bowls create the foundational structure underneath it. And so what I always like to say about it, I said, "Yeah, you're hearing the music, and the music's like going, 'Look at the hand, look at the hand,' and the bowls are going underneath it." And so alchemy of the 2 because, what happens with quartz crystal, which is just so exquisite, its natural property is to amplify and transmit energy, among other things. And so when you have, music that's created in such a heart space, with so much love, with so much, um, I would say, creating it in state, in a very connected state of source driven guidance. And you have that amplified by the sound. And and when you combine those 2 things, for me, you have something that is extraordinary. And that's what we got to do. And, boy, do I feel blessed.
Well, you were chosen too, because let's be honest, right? The vessel always gets chosen. And it's funny, we were talking about this at a lunch with these other two women who are artists, and we all said the same thing. If you heed the calling,
Yes.
right? But only if you heed the calling. And if not, the inspiration goes somewhere else to
Yeah.
another avatar, right? And another vessel. So you had the intuition and the wherewithal and the power and this fortitude to be like, this is my calling. Like, I have to do this. Not knowing anything about these, mysterious bowls that you had come across. And yet you become this pioneer and you create an entire different genre. And what's so cool about this, for those of you that don't know, is that, music in general is super healing to the human body
Yeah.
in general. And then now you combine the crystals and you combine the different frequencies. And I don't know anything about the alchemy bowls, but looking at them, and I could see them here, and they're all different kinds of crystals.
Well,
So do they have different frequencies?
everything has frequency. And everything, no matter whether it's your carpet or the window or the walls or the ceiling or your headphones that you're wearing, everything is energy and everything is vibrating at its own innate resonant frequency. So, of course, every bowl has its own frequency, just as you, Angelique, have your own frequency.
I
Okay.
do.
It's your own combination of all of those vibrating energies that create you as you. And so each one of these bowls has been uh, is a pure quartz crystal base. Well, it's not quite pure. It's like 99.992% gem silica quartz. Okay, and that forms the basis of the bowl. And then they have been either infused or overlaid with precious gemstones, minerals, and metals. So you're looking behind me, and I can point to this bowl here that you see, that that large bowl on the floor is a diamond bowl with platinum overlay. And then the one next to it, they call this a laughing Buddha, and that's iron based. And so if we go up here, we go to this one, that one is, um, uh, imperial topaz, okay? And then the one next to it, that is Larimar, and up we go up here. I'm trying to do this without looking, this one here, this kind of gold one here, that's Libyan tektite with, so if you go up here to this fancy pink one, there's rhodochrosite, and so on and on and on, and there are many, many, many different combinations of alchemical, they're alchemical bowls, is what they're called, alchemy bowls, and there's many combinations of gemstones, minerals, and metals. So each one is put into the blend of the gem silica is put into a graphite mold where upon it's, fired at 4,000 degrees, and they pop out, and well, but they probably do more than pop out. They have to be taken out of the mold, and then they're the top rim of the bowl is evened out, and each one is then tuned to find out what tuning it's going to carry inside of its experience. And so, once the bowls are tuned, because they all come out the note that they're meant to come out to be, um, I put them together in what I call harmonically based, families, or organize them inside a harmonically based tonal center, in which I play songs and music.
Well, it's so incredible because expanding on a little bit what you said about everything has its own frequency. It's so true. And even when we do things like chant, I remember I had gone to this pundit. My father was Hindu, and I went with him and we were chanting Om. And I remember he tapped me on the chest and I couldn't figure out. And he's like, no, 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 no. You're doing it in your throat, but you need the vibration to come from your chest because you're not actually in the right key. And I thought, my goodness, I have never, in all the times I have meditated and chanted, etc., I've never heard that. And he went so deep into how if you really want the power of sound, of meditation, chanting, etc., it has to resonate and actually vibrate in the chest. And the first time I felt that was the time I said, oh my God, there is so much power in sound, in music, and the way it actually vibrates your body, for good or for bad, right? Um, Unbelievable. And he said every human, because you just said this and it's so true, has a specific harmonic that is found in the universe, and it is only unique to that particular human. And he said, and your job is to figure out what that resonance is. He said, and this is where you're going to find it. And, he kept tapping me on the chest, which I didn't love. The New York in us is like, just keep your space, sir. Um,
Well,
tell me with your mouth. Yeah. But it really stuck with me. And I thought, "Ah." It's funny when I listen to your music, and I love to listen, to your particular music at night because I feel like it's very, very relaxing for me, and I have a lot of, anxiety, and I'm, very, very hyper, a lot of energy. So f I like that to really just kind of put it on in the background and decompress and allow my body to chill, so I super appreciate it, and something came to mind when I was listening a few weeks ago. I remember very distinctly about 10 years ago, I was sitting in my room, and I swear to you, Ashana, I never there was no music playing, and when I tell you it was playing in my head,
Mhm,
but it sounded like this almost like a choir music,
mhm.
and it had, like but it wasn't singing voices. And I woke up and I sat up and I'm looking around and I'm like, "Where is this coming from?" But I knew it was in my head. It was not outside. And a girlfriend of mine said, "Oh, you that's the music of the spheres. Like you tuned into the harmonic, the universal harmonic." That is the same feeling I get when I listen to your music. There's something it's like the connection to that divine energy, and so even hearing your story and hearing how the bulls really found you, and they seem to find you all the time, which is why they multiply. Um, and every time and you just keep creating more and more of this beautiful music. Tells me that, you probably have this high level soul, where you come down, the healing soul that does all of this, and it's an incredible gift, especially since so much of our music gets co-opted and, dropped into lower frequencies that can, interestingly enough, cause anxiety, and right? And so to be able to have this kind of music in our world, and hopefully more people will be expanding in this, um, is such a gift from the divine, truly.
What definitely is, and I have to say, I there's a couple things that you were sharing. One, I didn't seek it out, you're right, it just sort of opened, and inside of that experience, I have been given just an infinity of opportunities to grow as a human. It just, I think it's really important to note that, you know, just because you get given a gift or your soul brings through a gift doesn't mean that your soul is not slogging through all her poo poo, right?
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that the awakening, the balancing, the understanding, the appreciation of those gifts comes and becomes deeper as you are willing to slog through your poop. And when you work with instruments that are so, you know, no pun intended, crystal clear, where the sound is literally like a laser in terms of its pure tone and its directness, you know, um, because it's quartz based. You know, it's like nothing can stay in the way of uh, of all parts of you needing to entrain to that sound and shift. It becomes a a very powerful catalyst for personal transformation at a very, very deep level. And as such, it demands a lot of respect. This is the place where I get very concerned with all of the so-called sound healing trainings that are online now and the plethora of bowls that are flooding the market without any awareness, without any depth of understanding, with the get your sound healing certification in a weekend and that's all you need. And it makes me just want to, to rant and rave because I know from my own journey, not just for myself, but, you know, I came through with a lot of these, pioneers in bull playing. I watched what happened to people, who were just trying to figure this all out, and we all went through, pretty major, mm having to shift, having to clear the density in order to be able to hold the space and hold the frequency. And, you know, it wasn't peace, love, and light. It did not look like peace, love, and light in any way, shape, or form. It looked like a lot of, you know, and so, why do I say that? It's like, well, it's life, right? I mean, you gotta face all that stuff, and if you're courageous and willing and to just really be present with what's going on and do a lot of really deep self-inquiry, that those kinds of instruments, powerful instruments of sound, mantra, you know, they will take you to just extraordinary, shifts in your awakening if you're willing. I've had very similar experiences in training in mantra, where I worked with specific mantras for, months or, longer than that, and then watching what becoming absorbed in that sound would actually have to offer and what it opens in me, but then there's the amazingness of taking those sounds and then putting them in a bed of bowls, and now you got the mantra on steroids. So, you know, it's,
Yes. It's a
sound is
journey.
very, very powerful. So,
Yes.
if there's anything I can say to anybody listening to it, respect the sound.
I love that you did this, and you went down this road, and because it's twofold. I love that you're calling out the one thing that really, I think, drives many of us crazy, which is the performative healing. The unhealed healers that are out there, and to your point, "Oh, I have this certificate, and therefore" man, when you say it is a d it is a dark road. It is not easy because in order to earn your gift, you have to purify the vessel, and that's really what you're talking about,
Yeah,
is
true.
you gotta take all of it out and, take all of the crap, and it's not just in this lifetime.
It's
It's
that's true.
it's like right?
Oh, yeah.
It's it's lifetimes of garbage, right? Sitting in our cells, sitting in our DNA, sitting in our energetic,
Yep,
field,
yep.
and we've gotta do that work, and a lot of people and, this is a human nature, right? People look for the shortcut,
Yeah.
and there are no shortcuts when it comes to this. There really I mean, I remember when I was younger and I thought, "Oh, I could do this," and man, my guides were like, "Nope, back it. Nope, back it up. Nope." And I was like, "Why is this so hard?" And, my guide, he has a British accent because that's the only way I'm gonna listen to him
Oh, I
because I
remember
love the
you told me this, yeah.
And he's like, "Darling, you need to relax. It's gonna be a hell of a ride, and you're not gonna like most of it." And I remember thinking, now, in hindsight, you're like, "Hell of a ride." I didn't read the fine print. It's you know,
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh my god.
under
That's so true.
understatement of the century,
Yeah,
but it's what you said is so true. We have to respect gosh, there's so much of it. We have to respect sound, we have to respect knowledge, we have to
yeah,
respect all of these things
yes.
that we don't understand fully. But, so many people I remember, I call it the know nothings, know everythings. They come to me and they're like, "Well, I read this book and I studied with so and so." And it's like the Dalai Lama Buddhists that read books about it but haven't actually practiced
Yeah.
Buddhism. I sat in the temple for 3 hours every Sunday for years, with a woman who, she did introduce me to Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism, and I chanted and I chanted, and I have a Gohonsen, and I had Gojukai, and I had to earn my stripes, and I had to go through, all of that. And as you said before, when you do mantras and you chant, things come up. The body is constantly vomiting stuff and emotion and all sorts of thoughts and things that you really have to deal with and face. And so when I sit with people that are quoting, or misquoting in some cases, Buddha or whomever, it's like, this is where I have compassion for people who are really trying to heal. And that's why I love people like you in the world who did the work so that these humans, myself included, for sure, that were lost and really trying to find our way and really trying to find our way back to something that we know is bigger than ourselves. And you guys hold the light, and then we can hold the light. And the more of us that can do that, then we collectively heal. And unfortunately, we do have to come up against these people that, are just capitalizing off of healing. And it's hard. And that's why I'm so glad you're on this show. So people are like, okay, this is what the real thing looks like. This is what they sound like. And I love that you're being so incredibly honest about the sitting in the poop. I'm a little more crass. You're more of a lady. So I always say
I
sit
don't
in your
know.
shit.
I'm being good right now. Remember, I'm from the Bronx. Those are some of my first words.
It's always so shocking, right? When people meet you and I curse, I do. It's true. And even on the show, something will come out because it's who it comes out, right?
Yeah.
And I remember this chick, I would have never expected you to speak like that. And I thought, well, I'm not fake. And I think that's what I always love about New York is, like it or not, New Yorkers are just like, bleh. And you're just like, yeah. The first time I went to LA, I had a shock because I couldn't believe how not like that. It was so different. And I thought, never in my life, I could never do it. I would never be able to live there. Visit, yes. But there's something about New Yorkers, real New Yorkers, like we just kind of go all in for it. It's like, don't ask us what we really think.
Because they'll tell you.
We're going to tell you. Yeah. And you'll inevitably hate us for it. But
well,
but we think we're helping.
Jaywalk, so. And he has like, there's a space. Boom.
It's true. It is. I almost feel sometimes it's like living on a whole other planet because it's just such a right. And then the minute you go to other states and other places, and you're like, oh, sometimes I remember when we first moved to Greenwich, and Greenwich is not that far from New York. I mean, it's really, it's not. But, things are a little slower. And, the pace is slower. The energy is slower, Even, and I know you would appreciate this, that every city has a frequency and a sound. And
it does.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I was dying to ask you this, and I can't believe we got here organically, but there are no accidents. So I always felt that because of our individual harmonics, we have certain places that don't actually vibe with us versus places that do vibe with us. And right. And like there are places I can go and I feel immediately in tune. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my jam. I love this. And then there are places I go and I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go. I gotta go. But it's a inner thing. I can't explain it. And I feel it in my whole body. Like we're not in sync. There's no harmony here for whatever reason. And I was just wondering if that's because we're not all tuned to every single place on the planet.
It's about resonance is really what I think you're talking about. So if everything has its own innate, unique frequency, then when you get two or more of those innate frequencies that are comparable, there is what we call a natural resonance between the two. And so you take both of those, excuse me, because they're very close. And then when you put them together like that, then you get what's called amplified resonance. So the resonance gets larger. So let's just say, um, here's a really good example of this. So you're at you're at the World Cup, okay? And there's all the fans of Belgium on one side, and then there's all the fans of pick a team, Mexico, wherever it is
US.
on the other
Yeah,
side, right?
and Mexico.
And so all the Belgium fans are going, "Yeah!" For every goal, for every good thing that the Belgium teams, that whole group of collective is forming a natural amplified resonance inside that field. And so you can feel it. It's like, wow, we love Belgium. This is fantastic. And the team from Mexico, the fans are doing the same thing. And then if you go above one step above that, you feel a resonance because everybody that's in that stadium loves football/soccer. So it's like mm, all of our energy is now being collectively put together and being entrained by this one passion for football and soccer. And so that it gets bigger. Well, you can apply those principles to anything. It can be to your group of friends. It can be to a city. It can be to a kind of car you love. It can be to the kind of music. You'll have the same experience. Let's just say, you go to a Bruce Springsteen concert and everybody's Bruce, Bruce, right? As soon as he starts doing this, that, or the other thing, everybody's on their feet. It doesn't matter. Freddie Mercury, Queen, whatever. Yeah, just pick one. And everybody is literally they're entraining to the energy of Bruce Springsteen and his music or Queen, or whatever. And it creates this synergy of vibration. And the same thing happens in a city. And the same thing happens in relationships. So, what you think about, what you believe, so apply this to churches, apply this to particular religious beliefs, apply this to political parties. It's the same thing. There is a natural,
Yeah.
excuse me, an amplified resonance that is magnified by our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
that is what
sister.
happened. So you walk into a city and you go, "I don't really wanna be here.
Yeah.
I don't like this place." And in fact, when you start to get really, really sensitive to this kind of stuff, you literally can and my husband and I play with this all the time. You can be driving in an area, all right? And we will go down one street and I will go, "Let's get out of here." Right?
Yes.
Turn the corner and go, "This is okay."
Yes.
Okay? You can
Yes.
walk into like, there are particular stores that I absolutely do not enjoy going into because and it doesn't matter if I'm all, energetically buttoned up or anything. I have a very difficult time going into them. And then there are other stores that are like, "Oh, I love going in here." It's like,
I
this
know.
is a happy
Yes.
place. That's right.
Yes. Funny you should say this. So my son and I, and my son is 9, we were in my car the other day going to look at a house. We just decided, oh, I had seen a house on this same block. I absolutely loved it. So I was so excited to look at this one. We find it. We turn down the driveway and instantly I was like, you've made a mistake. You need to back up right now and get out of it. And it's a long driveway, right? And I thought, no, no, no. We're driving up. I absolutely hated the feeling. And my son turns around and says, I don't
Yeah.
like it here. We got to get out of here. And I looked over at him and I'm like, yeah. And I couldn't, see, even now, I'm like, I could not 3-point turn that car
Yeah.
fast enough. It was like, boom, to get out of this driveway. But the feeling was so heavy and so dark. And it was, when I tell you, it was nothing.
Yep.
It was, nobody was there. There were nothing, but just the energy itself was so intense. And, and I'll tell you this because I know you probably have a lot of this stuff too. I can sense when something happened
Oh,
to
yeah.
somebody, if somebody passed, right? So we had gone to this place and, over here in Nyack, they're beautiful. I mean, Nyack, I actually love Nyack. We had gone to this restaurant with my late father and who's actually very funny. And I remember pulling up and thinking, I don't know about this place. There's something off. But we get out, we go inside, and suddenly I'm like, oh, God, I can't breathe. And my father's like, you're fine. You're fine. We're good. Come on, Angelique, shake it off. So we get, so, and I'm with my girlfriend and I'm like, do you feel it? She's like, oh, yes, I feel like there's something heavy. I'm like, yeah, like someone died. And she's like, yeah, yeah. So the owner comes out. He knows the owner and they're talking. A beautiful woman. She takes us upstairs. She's like, oh, I want to show you the library. And I said, okay. And I am suffocating. Ashana, I'm like, I felt like, I don't know if you ever saw the original Total Recall, but I felt like Schwarzenegger when his eyes were bulging at the end, like, I was like, I'm going to die if I don't get out. And, and I'm trying to tell my dad, I'm like, really, could we go have sushi? The whole French thing, and he's like, Angelique, for God's sakes, this is a friend of mine. Oh, shake it off, And so I said, did somebody die? And she looks at me and she said, oh, yes. She points to this mural behind her, this woman, very regal looking. And she said, this tells us this whole story about how she was murdered and whatever. And my dad looks at it, he goes, oh, well, so sorry. Thank you for the story, but I think we're going to get sushi. Because once she said that, he knew. Me and my friend are like, ah! And he's like, we got to get out of here. When we got back in the car, he's like, whoa, you too. I got to get you some kind of exorcism. It was crazy. But it was so intense, And that's, we're
We
energetic
feel
creatures. We
everything.
feel
We feel
everything.
everything. But that's the beauty, really, when you think about it, because we're energetic creatures and because we're so empathic. When we can sit inside um, sound, healing sound, I'm going to call it healing sound because it is sound that's specifically crafted and created. It's music that's specifically composed and created to bring us back into a state of harmony and a state of coherence because there is so much of what you just described in the world. My husband, James, we were talking about him a little earlier. That's one of his specialties is to go into places like that and clear the energy so you don't have to feel it anymore. And it is part of his brilliance actually is that his abilities to do stuff like that. And then you can not but and when you want to create those spaces for yourself, healing music, either through recordings or live experiences, is a tremendous ally to nurture and nourish the spirit and bring literally the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and the spiritual bodies back online into a state of coherence where you are connected with, you know, a higher energetic experience of yourself. And when I say higher, what I'm saying is a vibrational frequency pattern that is more in alignment with wholeness, with healing, with that feeling of interconnectedness and interdependentness of all of life. And we need this. It's like we need beauty in the world now. We need beauty. We need
Yes.
beauty. We need to like move into spaces where we can remember what it feels like to be at peace, right? We are navigating so much difficulty and challenge and divisiveness and suffering, you know, and if that becomes the dominant vibration around us, OMG, we got to look and say, wait a minute, you know, what am I in training to in this moment? What vibration is becoming so powerful in my life that I can no longer feel what it feels like to be a loving human? Wow. Now I have to stop and take stock for myself that are like, "Is this who I want to be?" Or and we need both, you know, friendships and community around us that can remind us of that. We need to speak l words of love and words of loving kindness, words of acceptance, words of clarity, words of wisdom to ourselves and to each other. And one of the most powerful ways that I know of accessing those states is through music and sound. And so that kind of cocoon, that vibrational bubble that we can step into in a moment can literally shift us within moments. And that's the power of sound and healing. It's not going to do the work for you. Gotta remember this. All those goofy people that are out there right now going, "Sound heals, and I could sound healing can do this for you and that and the other." It's like, well, yes, kinda, sorta, you know, it creates the environment that you can step into to remember the state of wholeness and healing, depending on who's facilitating that for you. That's very important to remember that,
Amen.
right? But
Yes.
once you step into that state and the awarenesses begin to surface, then it's up to you. What am I going to do with that? Am I going to sit in the bubble of sound and go, ah, everything's fantastic, and then go out to my husband and tell him what an a-hole he is? You know?
You're
So,
right.
it
That's
is
right.
like
That's right.
it's more than sound. Sound, it becomes a very incredible, I'll use this word again, I'll repeat myself, forgive me, but it's an ally. It's an ally for us, and it is a portal, and it's up to us to begin to entrain to those states, and then to use our self-inquiry to learn and to grow. Makes sense?
Yes, so well said. Oh, girl, please, we should be clapping for this speech. It's fantastic. This is the whole reason that I have the call cut tool because the call cut method forces you to continuously stop yourself from those negative patterns and the way we think. Because to your point, if we go into a room and it's bathed in this beautiful energy, but we're not in sync with that energy because we're at a lower frequency and we haven't cleaned out, we haven't purified, not much is going to happen other than,
Well,
wow, this is really
go
beautiful.
ahead.
And you're right. And you're right in the sense that it opens the door for people because I've had friends that have gone and they felt different, like they felt shifts in their body, but it goes away very quickly because they can't sustain because they're
Yeah.
battling still against a lot
Yes.
of the stuff that's
Yes.
internal. Yeah, and so that becomes difficult. It would be nice though if we could get someone like you in one of those big World Cup stages with all these people. Because if you think about the energy you were talking about, right? With the yes, yes, but now we're doing that on this whole collective energy is coming and rising and raising the frequency of the planet through sound.
Well, I mean, but we have artists that are doing some things like that. We have the Bruce Springsteens in right now that are going, "Let's do this." I mean, look at what
Yeah,
Ricky Martin did at the in the Super Bowl, halftime. I thought that was, like, magnificent because he was, like, saying, "Come together." We're a human family, and so that's the power of music and sound can unite. There are many, many artists right now that are being called and stepping up,
yeah,
and there are artists, all through history, all through our understanding of history that have been doing this consistently. And I
yeah,
feel like, I'm blessed to do it in my own way, in my own, modest way to help people to the best of my ability. One thing I want to make sure that that I respond to you so that people can clarify something that you said. It doesn't mean you have to do it perfectly. It doesn't mean you have to step into the environment and then be perfectly spiritual or be perfectly purified. It's like
Yeah.
it's not like that. It's these are gentle doors that open little by little by little by little. So let's just say you walk in, you go to your first sound concert or healing concert experience, or you're listening to my music on the headphones, or you know, and and then you turn around and then you go to your husband and you tell him what an a-hole he is. You know, but there's something in the back of your mind now that's going, "I probably could have done that differently," you know? And
Yes. Yeah.
it's like beginning to attune yourself to hear that little thought form, that saying that, because now, this is what I tell my students, now the contrast between this state, we'll call it a beautiful state, the way that, they do in the oneness, blessing community. They call it a beautiful state or a suffering state, alright? So beautiful state, a suffering state. So here you have this experience of a beautiful state, and a beautiful state could mean clarity, it could mean healthy communication, it can be joyful, it can be gratitude, kindness, it could be neutrality. Right? So, and then, of course, we know all our suffering states. Those are our friends for a long time, right?
Yes.
Resentment and guilt and shame and hatred and all the stuff. But see, things when we start cultivating these states, and healing music is one of those places that cultivates beautiful states. So we go into those states like that. Then when we may be out of them, and then we're, beginning to be entrained by the old pattern of the relationship or the pattern that's created from doom scrolling on your phone. You look at that and you go, "Wait a minute. I I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna think like that anymore." Because so it's this, progression really, and I call it either a gentle progression, or sometimes, the universe is really can kick our butts and say, "You cannot do this anymore."
Yes.
And
That's true.
you get moved, whether you like it or not, into a new state of being, and if you don't carry that state, you're gonna be suffering. There it is. Does it make sense?
Yeah, of course, it makes perfect sense, and I would say to people to stick with the things that
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable sometimes, because it's where the uncomfortable parts of us are the parts that actually are ready to give up the ship. Like, the
Yes.
ego's ready to let it go, but we don't always stick with it long enough. If people want the instant gratification, and I love what you said, Ashana, because you said it doesn't have to be perfect. You can walk in and it can just be the beginning, but it's doing something. And, it's a very good point. And there are many people who will go to these things once and then not go back and say, oh, well, I did it and it didn't work. I have relatives like that. I'm like, "You did it once. You did it once," you know? And they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's," Angelique, "I've done everything." Like, I know everything. So it's really hard sometimes to get through to people that are committed to staying in the suffering, because it's a story that we've been told over and over and over. And what I love that you said is about the story of the beauty. And now we're going to move into this beautiful place. um, I do think that this is an incredible journey that you are taking people on, Ashana, and I feel like you and I could talk, oh god, for hours, but
Yeah.
we are
Hey.
coming to the end. Yes, and I just want, before we go, I want you to tell everyone where they can connect with you and where they can find you.
Well, we have, I have a beautiful website. It's, soundofashana.com. And of course, you can find all the recordings on there, and you can find out about our programs, teaching. James and I do retreats together, healing retreats together, which are more and more becoming a central part of our work together. And of course, you can reach me on Spotify, listen to all my music on all your favorite streaming platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, and join us on social media. We have a big, robust Facebook and Instagram, and just starting Substack now, and of course, all over YouTube. So
Yay! All right, friends, you heard it. And Ashana, thank you so much for being on Call Cut with Angelique. You have elevated this beautiful day for us. You have brought us into this land of music and art and heart. And I thank you for being here and for being you and for helping humanity to take that next step.
thank you so much, Angelique. My joy.
Thank you so much for joining me on Call Cut with Angelique. New episodes drop every Friday. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share with your friends. And remember, folks, no matter what life gives you, you must always keep shining.